Jasmine Crockett calling Texas governor, okay, she's from Texas, the governor, Greg Abbott, who is paralyzed and uses a wheelchair. She called him Governor Hot Wheels.
The Democrats are trying hard to copy Trump's style, his energy, his image, even the way he connects with people. But so far, it's not really working. Even Bill Maher called them out for it, saying the whole thing feels forced and completely unoriginal. His reaction was sharp, funny, and honestly hard to argue with. We've got the full breakdown for you right here. But first, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now, let's jump into it.
And here's Jasmine Crockett, who is, I thought, a big leader in the Democratic Party. Her quote is, "This is a terrible nightmare. Somebody slap me and wake me the because I'm ready to get on with it." On with what would be my first question. And also, this is the way this is like how a podcaster talks or some shit. Can you imagine? I don't know.
Maher definitely didn't hold back. He went straight after Crockett's so-called charisma, joking that it sounded more like podcast-style hype than real leadership. And honestly, that's what made the whole thing so funny. If you're going to copy someone's style, you'd at least hope people buy into it a little. But Maher clearly wasn't buying it at all. In his view, it came across less as confident and more as forced and unnatural. And the comparison to Donald Trump only made it worse. Whether people like him or not, Trump never really had to change the way he talked or act like somebody else to get attention. His style was always just his style. What made the moment even more interesting was that Maher wasn't alone. One of his guests also called out Jasmine Crockett's performance, and the criticism hit even harder. Trust me, you'll want to hear what was said next.
Congressperson Crockett is part of the new trend where informality is okay, where formality used to reign. Okay, fine. That's been going on since the 60s. So her routine is that she wants to bring a little bit of what I might quaintly call the ghetto cat fight into these spaces. I get it, you know, bring a blaxploitation movie or something into Congress. Great, work it. But you do not make fun of the fact that somebody lives their life in a wheelchair. That doesn't work. If she thinks that being black and fabulous gives her a pass on that, then she's got a really unfortunate sense of what black is.
Exactly. Democrats seem to have realized that voters respond more to people who come across as bold and unfiltered instead of overly polished and scripted. So now a lot of their newer politicians are trying to sound tougher, louder, and more relatable. The problem is, authenticity is not something you can just copy on command. People can usually tell when it feels forced. That's why critics say figures like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz sometimes struggle to connect naturally with voters. And now they believe Jasmine Crockett is falling into that same trap. The confidence and swagger can't feel rehearsed, or people stop buying it. The more politicians try to manufacture that kind of charisma, the more awkward it can start to look. And that's why some commentators see the attempt to imitate Trump's style as less of a political strategy and more of a performance that misses the mark. Now, if you haven't really followed politics closely, you may not know much about Jasmine Crockett yet. But take a look at this clip.
It's good to see you in the new year. You know, no one could have told me that when I went down to Austin, now it looks like a little bit over a year ago, that I would be running for Congress. It's just not what my plan was. But what I've always decided is that I would step up when there was a need.
Yep, that was Jasmine Crockett before many critics said the DNC started pushing her as one of the party's rising stars. Back then, she came across as calmer, more relaxed, and more measured in the way she spoke. But over time, a lot of people feel her public image has shifted into something much louder and more confrontational. According to critics, the change feels less natural and more like a carefully crafted political persona. They argue that instead of leaning into authenticity, she started focusing more on dramatic moments and attention-grabbing sound bites. And because of that, some viewers see her as trying too hard to become the Democrats' version of Donald Trump. The comparison is interesting because, love him or hate him, Trump's style always felt natural to his supporters. It didn't seem rehearsed. Critics of Crockett, on the other hand, say her approach feels overly scripted and exaggerated, almost like political theater instead of genuine conviction. And that's where the bigger risk comes in. Voters tend to notice when something feels forced, especially in politics. If the personality starts to feel more like an act than a real person, it can backfire quickly. That brings us to Bill Maher. During an interview with Chris Cuomo, Maher once again criticized Jasmine Crockett, calling out both her comments about fellow politicians and the DNC's support for her.
There's a crippled character on Joe the cop.
Yeah.
And they make 1,000 jokes about it.
But he's a comic.
But it just shows you that, you can joke about these things without
I'm fine with it. But when you cancel one person, because it's a black woman who's doing it, they're not going to cancel her.
Totally.
That's the problem.
You're right. She wears the magic armor. She wears a magic armor so she can do that. Yes, you're right. And both parties do that. Like when you're in our side, like if I made a fat joke about anybody in the world, how dare you from the left? If you make it about Trump or Chris Christie, it's just hysterical.
That's right.
That's what we got to get past.
I know.
That's those independent, what'd you call them? Independent and
critical thinkers.
Critical thinkers.
Like I tell people, I don't want the lemmings, I want the lions. You can have the lemmings. You got 45% of the country are happy to follow. Sheeple.
Oh, way more than that.
No, I think they just stay on the sidelines. I think they watch what's going on and they're like, these people are fucked up. Let me just stick to my regular life. Politics doesn't affect me anyway. I'm not going to let this toxify my brain space.
And on this issue, a lot of people agree with Maher's criticism. Some critics argue that Jasmine Crockett gets more protection from party leaders because of identity politics, saying the DNC often focuses too heavily on race, image, and representation instead of how candidates actually perform. They believe that when politicians fit the party's preferred image, criticism is sometimes dismissed too quickly as unfair or politically motivated. Critics also point to Kamala Harris as another example, arguing that the party ignored concerns and defended her at every turn rather than addressing weaknesses directly. Now, those same voices say the DNC is repeating the pattern, with Jasmine Crockett by promoting her aggressive style and public confrontations instead of encouraging a more grounded approach. In their view, it creates a cycle where politicians are elevated for media attention and messaging, but later left exposed when public opinion starts to shift. Supporters of Crockett would obviously disagree and argue that strong criticism toward outspoken politicians is often exaggerated. But either way, the debate around her growing role in the Democratic Party has definitely become more intense. And last month, that tension flared up again when Crockett called Nancy Mace a child during a heated exchange. Take a listen.
Somebody's campaign coffers really are struggling right now. So she gonna keep saying trans, trans, trans so that people will feel threatened. And child, listen, I want y'all to tell me whether or
Do
not.
not call me a child. I am no child.
I want
Don't
to
even
find
start.
out
I am a grown
which
woman.
of those
I am 47 years
emails
old. I have broken
actually
more
have.
glass ceilings than you
Chairman,
ever
I
will.
am reclaiming my
Let's go.
time.
You will not do that.
Order.
I am not a
Chairman.
child.
The debate focused on transgender issues, a topic that's become one of the most divisive fights in politics right now. Emotions were already running high, and the exchange quickly turned heated. Critics of Jasmine Crockett argue that once the discussion stopped going her way, she shifted away from the actual argument and made it personal instead. During the exchange, Crockett accused Nancy Mace of using anti-trans messaging mainly to raise campaign money rather than out of genuine belief. Supporters of Crockett would say she was calling out political opportunism, but critics saw it as a way to avoid debating the issue directly. And that's become a larger complaint many conservatives have about modern political debates. They argue that instead of sticking to policy disagreements, conversations often turn into attacks on motives and character. In their view, once the facts or arguments become uncomfortable, the focus shifts toward accusations and personal smears instead of actual discussion. To critics, it creates an atmosphere where winning the narrative matters more than having an honest debate. And when tensions rise, the conversation can quickly turn less about ideas and more about tearing the other side down.
She's so rotten, she wants migrants picking cotton. We present to you Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who made this shocking argument why America needs immigrants. Roll it, Alfred.
So I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands.
When the wheels fall off.
You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough to find a plantation.
Beyond the comparisons to Trump, critics also point to Jasmine Crockett's comments on immigration as another reason they struggle to take her seriously. They argue that many of her arguments in favor of looser border policies come across as overly simplistic and disconnected from the real concerns many Americans have about immigration. Some commentators have even compared her speaking style to Kamala Harris, saying that despite Harris often being criticized for vague answers, she still sounds more focused and structured by comparison. For critics, that says a lot about how frustrated they'd become with Crockett's messaging. A major point of disagreement centers on how immigration affects working-class communities, especially Black Americans. Critics argue that unchecked immigration can create pressure on wages, jobs, and local resources, and they believe Crockett overlooks those concerns while relying too heavily on political slogans and talking points. Supporters of Crockett would argue she's advocating for compassion and broader immigration reform. But opponents say the conversation often lacks depth and ignores the complicated economic and historical realities tied to immigration policy in the United States. To them, it reflects a bigger problem in modern politics, where image, messaging, and social media moments sometimes matter more than detailed policy discussions and real-world outcomes.
That was some of the dumbest I ever heard in my life. Here's the thing. This goes back to what we talked about earlier. They never have a solution. Just listen to your dumbass talk. You want to talk about agriculture? Why don't you fix the lottery? Why don't you make it easier for people who want to come into this country to work in agriculture and equitation and factories? Get rid of the lottery. Open it up. Talk to the president. Hey, we got a plan. We want to make it easier for people who can vet and come in and work in this country. Come up with an idea. Besides, any of y'all want to pick cotton? We're like, we're in suits in the middle of the Midwest. Why would we pick cotton? It's like the extreme stupidness of what she speaks. I'm so angry right now, and this is the one time where the white people can just call us every name in the damn book, because it's just, this is the type of that when you hear people speak like this, you're like, that's Black leadership?
Democrats are trying to copy Trump's style for 2028, hoping a louder, more confrontational tone will connect with voters. But critics say it's missing the point. Trump didn't win just by being outspoken. Supporters say he won because he offered clear policies and spoke directly to people who felt ignored by the political system. From that view, it wasn't about volume, it was about message and direction. Critics argue that simply copying the attitude without the same substance won't work. To them, it just comes off as noise instead of leadership, and voters can easily tell the difference.
Immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands. You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough to find a plantation.
So to be clear, she sees immigrants as some subservient class. Just in case you were wondering, she wants to import an underclass to do the work she considers beneath her. Now to leftist activist Kylie Brewer explaining common ways white people are racist.
One thing worth pointing out is how quickly Democrats call out others while ignoring issues inside their own party. Take Jasmine Crockett, for example. She criticized Congressman Byron Donalds over his interracial marriage, yet there was no similar backlash when their own former Vice President Kamala Harris was also married to a white man. Then there's Bernie Sanders, who often speaks against billionaires and the oligarchy, while his party still benefits from major donors like George Soros and Reid Hoffman, who pour millions into Democratic campaigns. Critics say this shows a clear double standard, one where principles seem flexible depending on who's involved. And that's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.